Hey, my name is Matt and I'm developing a game called Burden of Truth, which is a sequel to my most well-known project, Burden of Proof. Today is a special day if you're watching this on February 24th, because it's the start of the Steam Next Fest in 2025. That means you can play the first chapter of my game for free, right now. So please feel free to check it out on Steam. It's been a long time in the making, and I think you'll be pretty impressed at how everything has improved since BOP released. Now that we're 1 week past the Prologue Demo release date, I wanted to talk a bit about how I got here, why I'm making this game, what you'll see in the demo if you haven't already played, and what you can expect from the full project. I'll try my best not to spoil anything from the demo, but the background of this video will include clips from the game, so if you're trying to be extra careful, feel free to just come back after you've played it. It's okay, I'll wait. This is going to be a relaxed, behind-the-scenes sort of update, so it's nothing too crazy, but I hope you'll find it interesting. So it's been about a year since I started working on this game, and I thought it might be good to talk about why I chose this as my next project. Years after Burden of Proof released, I slowly started to see more and more people getting into the story, mostly thanks to YouTubers and Twitch streamers who picked it up, and I felt like it was a good time to follow up and answer some of the burning questions people have had with the continuation story. I've wanted to do this for a while, but I wanted to make sure that my game-making skills had improved enough to really do the story justice. So after Shinogi Chess Club 2 released in late 2023, I felt that I had really perfected the art of creating a visual novel with my distinct style, and while I always have more to learn, I knew that I finally had the ability to fully realize the vision that I had in my mind for the quality of characters, dialogue, level art, and music. Not to mention, I had created an entire suite of tools for building a visual novel in Unity, so it seemed like it would be easy to simply apply those same concepts to a similar project. In practice, it took a bit more effort than I expected to port over all of my scripts and modify them with the new objection, cross-examination, and puzzle mechanics that are required for the Burden of Proof series. But it still saved me a lot of headache instead of trying to start from scratch. I also made a lot of improvements to my codebase, creating more stable components that are able to report issues to me whenever anything breaks. I think that's one bit of game programming that a lot of people don't realize is super important. As an example, in the original Burden of Proof, I sometimes wrote in misspelled evidence IDs or camera angles to script files, resulting in issues where the camera wouldn't be updated or duplicate pieces of evidence would appear in the court record. But in Burden of Truth, anytime there's an unexpected character name, evidence ID, or camera angle, that information is reported to me so I can easily fix it. And when entering a cross-examination section, it checks ahead for all the possible evidence answers to make sure that those items are in your inventory. These reporting tools both speed up development time and ensure the game is more polished when it goes public. So that's a bit of a technical justification, but why make the game a flashback? If you haven't already heard, despite Burden of Truth being a sequel, it takes place during the 2-year time skip between chapters 1 and 2, where we learn that Conrad Cross has become a defense attorney. Originally, this story was going to be told in Chapter 3 in the original game, but someone who had offered to help create that part of the game fell through on that late into development. That's more my fault than anyone else's, and although I'm sad that the story couldn't make it in, it did allow me to focus more on the ending sequence and really make that part shine. And the final chapter has really defined so much of what Burden of Proof actually is that looking back on it, I can't imagine it going any other way. So with a new game in the series, I was presented with another chance to do things the right way. With more in-game time spent on this new extended Chapter 3, I could really flesh out Conrad's character and show a more gradual transition to the person he becomes at the end of the first game. Though I have more ideas for where the story could head next, I thought this would be a good time to go back to the basics and reintroduce the franchise to a new audience. So establishing this important part of Cross's journey seemed like a great opportunity to do that. And with Chapter 3 as the main event, it only made sense to focus on an introductory case that takes place before that, where we get to see Prosecutor Cross once more. So that's what you get to play in the Prologue Demo. Since all of that sounded exciting and not too tough to put together, I thought it'd be perfect to tackle as my next project. I might have been a little too optimistic though, because I always tend to bite off more than I can chew. If you watched my update video from early 2024, You might remember that I was laid off from my day job shortly before the video was released. We're coming up on a year since that happened, and unfortunately, I haven't even gotten close to finding another source of income to replace it. You might have heard that the computer science industry has been falling apart recently, and from what I've seen so far, it's 100% true. I've been tracking my job applications in a spreadsheet, and it's revealing some truly horrifying statistics about the job market. In late 2019, when I was still in college, it took me about, say, 5 to 10 applications to land 3 interviews with various companies or organizations within my school. Granted, those were all entry positions that didn't pay too well immediately, and were built for people straight out of school, but they were still something. I know I was a bit lucky for the time getting that response and eventually landing a job from one of those 3 interviews that lasted me until 2024. But compared to now, well, I've applied to over 400 jobs at this point, and only one has offered me an interview, which itself was a bit sketchy, unprofessional, and way too quick, with the company likely cycling through dozens of people within the same day. Well, what changed? Was it me? Am I no longer good enough? Is there something wrong with my resume? Well, hopefully not, because technically I have more experience than ever before. I listed my last job and title, which I hope is pretty impressive for someone my age. I listed the new games I worked on. I listed my new education qualifications now that I have a degree in computer science. I reformatted and reworked my resume again and again and again and had it reviewed by peers. I applied to jobs recommended to me by friends and past coworkers. I lowered all my standards to the point where I'm applying to jobs I would actively hate just to get something. And still nothing. What's happening? Is the demand just that low for computer scientists? Is there really that much competition where someone with this much experience can't find anything at all? I don't know why the industry is so crushing and difficult right now. Is it AI? The economy? The layoffs from major studios these past few years? Whatever it is, I can't do anything about it. So, what am I supposed to do when I'm personally struggling? What is anyone supposed to do when faced with this? I sought alternative means of income. I put up a Fiverr page to see if I could create art for people in need of it, despite feeling really uncomfortable about tight deadlines. But all I got was spam, and people who wanted me to essentially do free work for them before the page expired and I had enough of it. I tried to look for contract work, commissions, website building jobs, just anything that could sustain me, and found nothing. I used to know people that offered jobs in case I ever needed one, and now they've all run dry. I have no more connections to fall back on, no more favors to cash in. I've asked for help just about everywhere I can think of, and yet I've found nothing after nearly an entire year of searching. I'm not at the point yet where I'm in any serious financial trouble, and I have the means to continue as I am for a while longer. I planned ahead for something like this. I saved up when I was earning, and I'm careful with how I spend, but watching my bank account slowly drain as my necessities and student loans eat away at my funds isn't a pleasant sight. And not having enough money to accomplish certain life goals I wanted to achieve is demoralizing, to say the least. If I didn't have my games on Steam, I don't know where I'd be right now. Currently, they are the only thing helping to offset some of the costs that I'm facing each month. But sadly, it's not nearly enough. And I don't want my game development career to be driven by money. In fact, the last thing I want to do is compromise my vision just to maximize profits. But given the circumstances, something has to give. If my games took off and could actually sustain me, well, that would be the perfect outcome to all of this. This is what I want to do for my career, and knowing that I can survive off of it would alleviate so much pressure from daily work that I put into game development. Now more than ever, it's important for my next game to succeed. But if it doesn't, that's okay too. I'll just be forced to make the best of what I have, to promote what games I've put out already, and either way I'm probably looking at building a much smaller project after Burden of Truth is finished. Beyond that, I still don't feel like I have enough to offer for any sort of crowdfunding campaign like Patreon, but if I keep up a certain level of output and feel confident that people could be interested, I'm not against trying. Here on YouTube, I'm hoping to make a lot more videos this year, and I hope you won't mind if I chase down popular topics or play the algorithm. At this point, I just have to do everything I can to promote my brand and my work. So with all that said, I think you can see why it's been a tough year. Despite that, I was hard at work on Burden of Truth, and I'm hoping the demo can do a lot for the inevitable sales by encouraging a lot of people to try it. Still, it's hard to feel as though this amount of work could ever be made up for in sales. I don't say all of this lightly, and the purpose behind talking about it isn't to make you feel bad or anything, just to honestly let you know where I'm at and how difficult it's been to work on the game with all this going on. I thought building games would get easier, but ever since 2020 it just seems to be getting harder and harder. And that's mostly on me for dreaming too big and letting things fall out of scope. But the external pressures haven't helped much either. However, anyone who knows me knows that I'm not easily deterred. Even with all these hardships, I still pushed through and made the best game that I could for people to play, because I want this to be my career. I can't imagine doing anything else long term, so I can only put my best foot forward, as always, and hope that I will at least be able to sustain the cost of living with it. Regardless of what happens now, this part of the game is finally out there and in your hands, so I hope you enjoy what I've been cooking and are looking forward to supporting me when the full game drops. So now I can finally talk about the project itself. The first chapter serves as an introduction to the main courtroom mechanics, which means you'll be thrown directly into a trial that takes place right before the full Chapter 3 begins. As Prosecutor Conrad Cross, your goal is to find the defendant, Max Colladera, guilty of murder. He's been accused of killing his coworker, Abigail Graviton, in a robotics lab within the Tactile Synthetics Research Building. Although it seems like your average case at first glance, something sinister is happening behind the scenes that threatens the foundations of the justice system. The jurisdictional complication has slowed the flow of information to the courtroom, which means evidence from the crime scene is provided to you as it's rediscovered in real time. Without a full picture of the events, you can't possibly hope to prove your case with certainty until more evidence is delivered to you. Still, you have to make do with what you have, because Cross is taught to trust in his initial deduction, no matter where it leads. You can use the evidence provided to you to answer questions about the crime and piece together a timeline of events from the day that the crime occurred. During a cross-examination, you'll be able to navigate through each witness statement and find the one that contradicts a piece of evidence in the court record. If you need assistance, a new hint system is available to give you an edge over any particularly difficult puzzles. Exposing the witness's lie could lead to new discoveries about the murder. On that subject, if you see an exclamation mark indicator, it means you can object to the current line of dialogue. This allows you to call out false information, but be prepared to back it up with evidence, or the judge might grow weary of your mistakes. As the trial progresses and the arguments start stacking up against you, you must fight back with everything you have in order to find the truth and deliver justice for Abigail's murder. If you're wondering what you need to have played before tackling the demo, the answer is nothing. I purposefully built it so that you don't need any prior knowledge of Burden of Proof to enjoy the Prologue chapter. However, for the full game release, which will happen later this year, you will need to have played chapters 1, 2, and 4 from the original entry to fully understand the story. So this is my recommendation if you're new to the series. You can play the demo as an introduction, and then go back to Burden of Proof to catch up in preparation for the final release of the game. I hope that all makes sense, and if not, it might become more clear once you just dive in and try it out for yourself. If it's been a while since you've played, I do recommend playing through the short abridged Chapter 3 from Burden of Proof from the chapter select menu to get a refresher on what to expect. All of those scenes will basically be remastered and told again with a new perspective in the full game, so I hope all of the improvements have been worth the wait. I don't want to say much about the story of Chapter 3 so that you can be surprised when it's finally ready, but needless to say, it's going to be a fun journey. You'll be tackling puzzles that are much more involved and complicated, and dealing with more dangerous situations as you solve multiple different crimes that are all tied together in one overarching story. The full game will feature investigation scenes that let you walk around places of interest to get a feel for the space where the incidents occurred. Of course, you'll also be gathering evidence, talking to witnesses, and learning more about the characters while progressing the plotlines I introduced in the first game. When the full game does release, hopefully no later than summer this year, it will be packed full of content for you to enjoy. This is by far the longest and most challenging story I've ever had to write, but I hope it'll be worth the effort and hold over BOP fans for a while, because I think I'm gonna need a pretty long break from Burden of Proof once this is over. Of course, I have big ideas for the plot, and I'm thinking that this series could become something like an anthology, similar to Ace Attorney, without any predefined story beats that are set in stone, or character arcs that just conclude the idea of a main character. In that sense, there are always more stories to tell and new cases to solve, so I don't think there will ever be any hard ending to the series. But that doesn't mean the games necessarily have to only focus on Conrad Cross, or even be tied to the style or tone that they're known for now. I always want to keep an eye out for opportunities to evolve and grow and show new things, because I think that's how I can keep things fresh and exciting for everyone playing. I do also want to note that I'm not sure how I'll be handling demo saves when the full game is out, so be prepared to potentially play the first chapter again from the beginning when you pick up the final release. This is partially intentional because I want people to have the full context fresh in their minds before going into the rest of the game, but I'm still a bit on the fence about it because I don't want to waste anyone's time. So I apologize for any confusion there, and if this makes you hesitant, feel free to just wait for the full game so that you can ensure that you don't have to replay anything. But if you're eager to see what's next, I encourage you to play the demo and let me know what you think here or on the Steam forums. I think that about wraps up everything I wanted to say for this demo release celebration video. Though Burden of Truth isn't really the best fit for a devlog series due to being so story heavy, I'm always happy to share more about my development process. So I'll definitely be thinking about different videos I can make covering more behind the scenes stuff. In the meantime, development on the full game continues, and I've got a lot of exciting stuff to share as we approach the final release. So please enjoy the Steam Next Fest, play a bunch of awesome demos from indie game developers, and let me know what you thought of the game so far. To everyone who has already played the demo and given your feedback, thank you so much for the support. And to everyone eagerly waiting for the full game to drop, I really appreciate you, and you should know that you're the reason I'm able to make this game in the first place. If it wasn't for all the kind words I've received from Burden of Proof, I wouldn't feel confident enough to put all this effort into a sequel. But anyways, I've rambled on long enough. There's a lot of things I'm hoping to tackle this year, including more YouTube videos, Godot engine improvements, new workflow tools and packages, and even designing some new games, regardless of whether I actually start developing them. So if you'd like to hear updates about my work as quickly as possible, be sure to follow me on my socials, and thanks for playing.